Picture the scene. It's etched into our collective memory, a defining moment of cinematic rebellion. Thousands of defiant Scotsmen, their faces streaked with bold blue war paint, their traditional kilts billowing as they surge forward. They are a wave of pure, untamed fury, charging across a vast, open field to shatter the disciplined ranks of the English army. The raw emotion, the stirring music, the sheer spectacle of it all. It's one of the most powerful and iconic sequences in modern film history, single-handedly shaping how millions perceive medieval Scotland. It's the story of William Wallace, the commoner who rose to become a legend. There's just one very large problem with this unforgettable image. Almost none of it is true. The kilts? They wouldn't become common for another 400 years. The blue face paint, or woad, that was a practice of the Picts, ancient inhabitants of Scotland from 1,000 years earlier. And that epic, wide-open battlefield charge? It completely erases the tactical genius that actually won the day. The reality is far more complex, and frankly, far more interesting than the fiction. Today, we're peeling back the layers of Hollywood myth to uncover the truth of a pivotal moment in the First War of Scottish Independence, the Battle of Stirling Bridge, fought on September 11, 1297. This was a battle so strategically brilliant, it not only secured a legendary victory for an outnumbered Scottish force, but fundamentally altered the course of Scottish history. It was a masterclass in using terrain, patience, and psychology to overcome a seemingly invincible enemy. Yet, it has been so profoundly misrepresented by popular culture that the one element giving the battle its name, its strategic core, and its very soul, was completely left out of the story. We're talking, of course, about the bridge. Join us as we rebuild the real story of Stirling Bridge, piece by piece, and discover why the truth is a tale more compelling than any Hollywood epic. Before we dissect the brilliant, brutal tactics of the Battle of Stirling Bridge, we need to perform a reality check. The 1995 film is a cinematic masterpiece, a powerful epic that captured the world's imagination and redefined William Wallace for a generation. Its portrayal of a rugged, rebellious Scotland fighting for freedom is undeniably compelling. However, its commitment to historical accuracy is, let's say, flexible. To truly appreciate the genius of the Scottish victory, we must first strip away the layers of Hollywood myth and look at the men who actually fought and led on that fateful day in 1297. So, let's clear the air. First, the iconic look. The film presents the Scottish warriors in flowing tartan kilts, their faces painted with bold blue woad. It's a fantastic visual, but it's pure fiction. The Great Kilt, or A, wouldn't become common Highland dress for another 300 years, emerging in the late 16th century. The modern tailored kilt is an even more recent invention. As for the blue face paint, that was a practice of the Picts, an ancient people of Scotland, but it had died out nearly 800 years before Wallace was even born. The real Scottish army of 1297 would have looked far more conventional for the period. The average soldier, the spearmen of the Schiltrons, wore practical, layered clothing, likely a linen shirt and a padded tunic called a gambeson, which offered surprising protection against cuts and blunt force. Those who could afford it, including the leaders, would have added a hauberk of chainmail and a simple steel helmet. It was a functional, effective, and decidedly less cinematic uniform. Next, let's talk about the leaders. The film portrays William Wallace as a common farmer, a man of the people driven to rebellion only by personal tragedy. This is a powerful narrative, but it obscures the truth. William Wallace was no peasant. He was the son of a minor nobleman and a landowner himself. While his origins weren't as lofty as the great lords of Scotland, he was an educated man from the gentry class, trained in the arts of war. More importantly, he wasn't alone. The film completely erases the single most important figure in the Scottish army at Stirling, Andrew de Moray. While Wallace was leading a guerrilla campaign in the south, Moray, a more prominent nobleman with a direct claim to leadership, was waging a highly successful conventional war in the north, systematically recapturing English-held castles. He was the established military leader, the tactical architect of the rebellion. It was the union of Moray's Northern Army and Wallace's Southern forces at Stirling that created the formidable host capable of challenging the English. Moray was the co-commander of the Scottish Army, a man whose strategic acumen was arguably the primary reason for their success. Tragically, he was mortally wounded during the battle, and his death allowed Wallace's legend to grow and eventually eclipse his own. To forget Andrew de Moray is to misunderstand the entire campaign. On the morning of September 11, 1297, the English army arrived at the south bank of the River Forth, led by John de Warenne, the Earl of Surrey, and the treasurer Hugh de Cressingham. It was a formidable force. We're talking about an estimated 9,000 infantry and at least 1,000 heavy cavalry, a professional, well-equipped, and battle-hardened army. They looked across the river at the Scottish rebels, a smaller, less armored force of perhaps 6,000 men, and saw an easy victory. The Scots were outnumbered, out-armored, and outgunned, but William Wallace and Andrew de Moray, the two brilliant commanders of the Scottish forces, weren't planning to fight a conventional battle. They had a secret weapon, one the English commanders fatally underestimated: geography. The entire English plan hinged on crossing that river, and the key to that crossing was a single, narrow, wooden bridge. It was so constricted that historians believe only 2, or at most 3, horsemen could ride across it side by side. It was a logistical bottleneck of epic proportions. Now, there was another option available to the English: a nearby ford, a shallow part of the river where a larger number of troops could cross simultaneously. In fact, a Scottish knight in English service advised Surrey to use it, offering to guide a cavalry detachment to outflank the Scots. But Surrey, perhaps overconfident or simply impatient, dismissed the idea. He infamously declared his men were ready for battle and ordered the advance across the narrow bridge. It was a catastrophic error in judgment. The Scottish strategy was a masterclass in patience and timing, executed in 5 distinct phases. 1. Lure the English onto the bridge. 2. Allow a significant portion of their army, the vanguard, to cross. 3. Wait until that vanguard is trapped in the marshy ground on the north bank, with no room to form up. 4. Spring the trap, sending Scottish spearmen to seize control of the bridgehead, cutting off both retreat and reinforcement. And 5. Annihilate the isolated English force. The English, arrogant and utterly oblivious to the trap, began to cross. It was a slow, painstaking process. Man by man, horse by horse, they trudged over the wooden planks. On the Abbey Craig overlooking the battlefield, Wallace and Moray waited. This wasn't the wild, immediate charge you see in the movies. That would have been suicide. Instead, they held their nerve with iron discipline. They watched as the English vanguard, the elite forward element of the army, made it to the north side. They continued to wait as more and more soldiers poured into the kill zone, a loop of the river that formed a natural enclosure. They waited until the English army was decisively split in 2, a substantial force trapped on the north bank, and the vast majority, including the commander Surrey, stuck helplessly on the other side. Only then, with an estimated 5,000 English soldiers across the river, did the Scots give the signal. A horn blast echoed across the valley. The Scots struck. A detachment of spearmen charged not at the main English force, but straight for the north end of the bridge, seizing it and cutting the English army in 2. The English vanguard was now completely trapped. They had nowhere to run and no room to maneuver their heavy cavalry. The soft, marshy ground, known as a carse, neutralized their greatest advantage. Horses became bogged down in the mud, becoming easy targets. Knights in heavy armor found themselves unable to build momentum for a charge. It wasn't a chaotic brawl. It was a methodical, disciplined slaughter in a swamp. The English forces still on the south bank could only watch in horror, unable to help as the bridge, their only route to the battle, was now the very thing sealing their comrades' doom. The bridge eventually collapsed, or was destroyed by the Scots, trapping thousands of English soldiers. The invincible English heavy cavalry was useless in the marshy ground. Why did the movie leave the bridge out? The director, Mel Gibson, famously said the bridge got in the way of the filming. By removing it, he turned a brilliant tactical ambush into a generic bravery charge. When we strip away the Hollywood face paint, we find a story that is actually more impressive. It's not a story of raw rage, but of brilliant military minds using the land to defeat a superpower. Which historical movie should we debunk next? The Patriot? 300? Let us know in the comments.